Welcome back. As we mentioned, the White House and Congress remain at a standstill, with the president refusing to sign a housing bill that passed with overwhelming bipartisan support as he continues to push lawmakers to pass a voter ID bill. But amid that gridlock, a group of young state legislators, part of the Future Caucus, are gathering to discuss bipartisan strategies to address challenges in their communities and how to deliver results for the American people. Joining me now on set for our latest installment of our Common Ground series, two of those state legislators, Democrat State Delegate Kayla Young of West Virginia and Republican State Representative Sainz of Georgia. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thanks to have us.
We really appreciate it. Let me start with you, Representative Sainz. Talk about what the Future Caucus is. What do you hope to accomplish?
Absolutely. I don't think Spain was the only one making scores today. Really, it's a place that gives, because proximity matters, especially in a relationship-oriented profession like state legislators. We're not professionals. We're all citizen-oriented legislators. And being able to be in the room, not just with those that you share a background with and a partisan connection with, but also those who represent everyone else in this beautiful union we have, really gives you the ability to understand that policy perspective in a 360 way.
State Delegate Young, how do you see it? What do you think? What do you hope you can accomplish? And how important is bipartisanship to this caucus?
It's incredibly important. We bring together lawmakers from all over the country, and we get together based on our age, not our partisanship. So we don't even know what party we are. We just get together and talk about policy, and we're honestly much more effective than the lawmakers that we serve with. We care about getting things done for people.
Well, let's talk about one of the headlines today. The president saying he's not going to sign the housing bill. It is a bipartisan piece of legislation. State Representative Sainz, how do you see this? Do you have any concern that it could impact Republican chances of trying to hold on to the House and Senate?
You know, one thing that I try to focus on, at least in the State House, is where is the pragmatism instead of the partisanship? And I think that I can't speak for D.C., and I very much intentionally stay in a State House-oriented lens. We did a lot of great success with literacy bill, and it took a cross-partisan effort to do that. And I hope that whether it be in housing or any other issue that our federal government needs and has to tackle right now, especially on affordability issues, which both Republican households and Democrat households are feeling, that gets done. How the sausage gets made up here, I'm not a content expert in.
How do you see this decision? Look, this is still going to become law. This is effectively the president saying he wants to pass his voter ID bill, and this is his method of trying to make that argument. So the law is going to pass.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to pass. And I think it's just another example of why Congress remains in gridlock and makes voters apathetic, quite frankly. And they should really be looking to their state lawmakers to be getting things done, because we are.
You know, you made such an interesting point, and you've touched on this, which is the gridlock here, how the sausage gets made here. How do you think people in your state perceive what is happening here in Washington? Do you get the sense that they're fed up?
Absolutely. They're completely fed up, and they're apathetic about voting in general because of it. And I can understand why, because they want government to be a little more boring and to just function like it's supposed to.
And what do you make of that? What do you hear from your constituents about what happens here in Washington? And what's your message to Washington lawmakers?
Yeah, there's a level of feeling of a disconnection. But I also think, just because you're cross-partisan doesn't mean you can't look at the president's focus on election integrity is a great example. My voters want to not just have a credible election, which we do in Georgia, but have faith in that election. And I think that emphasis is in the way you put it. Nothing wrong with that, but there's definitely a feeling that we need more responsiveness quickly. And I agree, the State House is the place that you can get quick and meaningful solutions that Congress is just not capable of moving in that speed.
One of the things that we are tracking is the divide in both parties. State Delegate Young, we're seeing this in the Democratic Party. We spent a lot of time talking about this related to the Graham-Plattner crisis in Maine, for example. But it does highlight this divide between progressives and moderates within the Democratic Party. How do you see this divide playing out? Is there room for both? And do you think that we're seeing really the emergence of democratic socialism and Democrats are further to the left.
Yeah, I think we'll see come fall, right? We don't know exactly. Primaries are one thing, but generals are a completely different thing. I think voters and the American people want and deserve pragmatism and people that can actually get things done rather than being able to say that they're the winner of an election or the winner of a policy. It doesn't need to be red versus blue all the time. We just need to get stuff done.
And State Representative Sainz, how do you see the divide in your party, in the Republican Party, where you do have, again, moderates, you have the populists, you have the more conservative members of your party?
Absolutely. In Georgia, we went through a very competitive primary for our governor, and I was excited how the results came out, and we had a person who's practical, who knows the lens of poverty and success and small business. But what we see is, a very deep divide in a lot of different issues and feelings. It's when those feelings become a reducing point to getting things done that it's a negative. Our democracy is messy, and an ever more perfect union is what we're working towards. We haven't achieved it, and I appreciate that messiness.
Yeah, well, speaking of the gubernatorial race, billionaire Rick Jackson won the Republican primary. He poured in more than $100 million of his own money. You endorsed him. You're referencing him. How do you see that playing out? And do you think that the fact that he's a billionaire, his billionaire status helps, hurts? How do voters see that in Georgia?
I think going from a foster child to a billionaire in Georgia shows an American dream, a completely self-made man who knows both levels of poverty. I was excited to be the first member, a committee chairman, to endorse him in the State House, and it was because I saw him as a future of our conservative platform that is pro-family, pro-compassion, but also pro-free market, small business enterprise.
We only have about 10 seconds left, but how do you see that divide? Zohran Mamdani told me he doesn't think billionaires should exist.
Yeah, I'm not sure billionaires should exist when we have kids that go to bed hungry.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you for a fantastic bipartisan conversation. Stephen Sainz and Kayla Young, really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.